In this video, we'll be looking at the properties of Surd, and if you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe so that you'll be the first person to be notified when a new video is being uploaded. Now, let's get started. So the first property we're looking at is the product to exponent property. Now, this says that if you have square root of a multiplied by square root of a, now this is just like we having a times a, and we know a times a is going to give us a squared. But in this case, we have square root of a being multiplied by square root of a, which means we are going to get square root of a all squared. Now, we can see that this squared is going to cancel the square root sign, and at the end, we have e. So, example, if we have square root of 2 being multiplied by square root of 2, then means that we are going to get square root of 2 all squared, and this 2 is going to cancel the square root sign, and at the end we have 2. So from what we can see, we can generalize that if we have square root of a number being multiplied by the same number in a square root sign, then at the end we are going to get back the same number. That is, if we have square root of b being multiplied by square root of b, we are going to get the same number. Moreover, if we have square root of 3 multiplied by square root of 3, then our answer is equal to 3, provided the numbers are the same and they are multiplying and they can be found in the same square root sign. So that is the first property of Surd. Now we continue to the second one. The second property is what we call the product property. Now, under the product property, we have 4 types. So the first one is if you have square root of a multiplied by square root of b. Now, since they are multiplying and they are different numbers, but once they can be found in the same root sign, we can multiply the same numbers. So it means we can multiply a and b under one root sign. So that is a times b. And at the end, we are going to get square root of a b. So example, we can think of square root of 2 times square root of 3. Now with this, they are multiplying and they are different numbers, they are not the same. So if that happens, then we can write one square root sign and multiply the numbers. That is 2 times 3, and at the end we have 2 times 3 is going to give us 6. That is square root of 6. Better still, we can think of square root of 4 times square root of 6. Now if that happens, we are going to write one of the square root sign and we multiply the numbers. That is 4 times 6, and we have here 4 times 6 is going to give us an answer of 24. That is square root of 24. So that is the second property of Surd. Having understood this, let's move to the next one. Under the second property, we said we have 4 types. So this is the first one, and so the next one will be II. Now II is saying that if you have a square root of b multiplied by c, that is square root of c. Now this is what we are going to do. We are going to multiply the coefficient. So the coefficient of square root of b is a, and then the coefficient of square root of c is 1. So if you multiply a by 1, we are going to get a. So just like we did for the first one, we are now come to deal with the numbers or the radicand in the square root. It means we are going to write one of the square roots and we multiply the radicand in the square root. That is b times c, and at the end we have our final answer as a square root of bc. So example, we can think of 2 square root of 3 multiplied by square root of 5. Now with this, just like we said earlier, we are going to multiply 2 by the coefficient of the square root of 5, that is 1. So we have 2. And we multiply the square root. So it means you write 1 of the square root and multiply 3 by 5. So 3 times 5. And we can further simplify our answer as 2 square root of 15. Better still, we can think of square root of 5 times 3 square root of 2. So the coefficient of the term or the square root 5 multiplies the coefficient of the square root 3, and we have 3. That is square root of, now 5 times 2, we have 5 times 2 here. And so at the end we have 3 square root of 10. So that's the second one under the second property of surd. We continue with this third type. And the third type, we are talking about A times square root of B. So if that happens, then we are going to have our answer as A square root of B. So the A is going to multiply the square root, and we have A square root of B. So example, we can think of 6 times square root of 3, and thus we are going to get 6 square root of 3. The 6 is going to multiply the square root sign or the square root, and then if you have 2 times square root of 3, we can also write our answer as 2 square root of 3. It's not always going to be 3, but in this instance we are taking 3. Then we can also think of a number like 7 times square root of 2. That means we are going to get 7 root 2. So that is the third type under the that property of surd. Now the last one is, we can think of A square root of B multiplied by C square root of D. Now with this, we are going to multiply the coefficients and then also multiply the surd. Now the coefficient of the square root of B is A, and the coefficient of the square root of D is C. So this means that we are going to have A times C in one bracket, and you multiply the square root numbers, that is square root of B times square root of D. So this is what we have. So now we can simplify our answer as equal to AC square root of BD, and it's basically the same. So that is the fourth type. So we can take an example, and if you have 2 square root of 3 multiplied by 4 square root of 5, then our solution is going to be, you multiply the coefficient, that's the rational part. So we have 2 times 4 in one bracket. Now we have come to multiply the square root part, that is square root of 3 times 5, and at the end 2 times 4 gives us 8, and bring our square root, and 3 times 5 gives us 15. We take the next example, and we can think of 2 square root of 5 multiplied by 3 square root of 7. So with this, we are going to multiply the rational part or the coefficient, and that is 2 times 3 in one bracket, and we have the other bracket which will contain the surd. So that is square root of 5 times 7, and we know 2 times 3 gives us 6, and square root of 5 times 7 gives us square root of 35. And so that is the last part for the product property of Surd. Now we move to the last one, and the last one is what we call the quotient property. So this is the last property. Now the quotient property, we are thinking of square root of A divided by square root of B. Now this square root of A and square root of B, we can write them as, since they all have the same square roots, then we can write one big square root for them and now divide the rational part, that is A out of B. I think that's very simple. So example, we can think of square root of 18 divided by square root of 6. And with this, we are going to have one big square root, and now we divide 18 by 6. So that is 18 divided by 6. And we have our final answer as, now 6 goes into itself, 1 goes into 18 3 times. So we have square root of 3. We can take further examples, and we can think of square root of 5 out of 9. So in this case, we know that we can divide the numbers by assigning to each number a square root. So we have square root of 5 divided by square root of 9. So if you compare these two equations, we can see that we were given this one, and then we have to simplify it in that order. So it's not always that we're going to get it just like the first example. Sometimes it's going to change. So if we have to continue, then square root of 5 is the same thing. So we maintain square root of 5. And we know square root of 9. 9 is a perfect square. So each square root is going to give us 3. And so our answer is square root of 5 divided by 3. The last example is square root of A squared divided by 25. Now with this, we can divide the square root by the numbers, and we have square root of A squared divided by square root of 25. Now A squared is going to cancel the square root, and we have A, and then 25 is a perfect square, and so the square root of 25 gives us 5. And our answer is A out of 5. And this ends the properties of Surd. Thank you for being with us to the end of today's video. Kindly like, comment, subscribe, and share. Spark Math, thinking beyond infinity.